Hi, Liddy. It's Mommy. I'm going to read you a story for bedtime. I love you, and I'm going to miss you. I miss you already. I hope you're being good. Let me show you my bedroom really quick. I'm sitting on my bed. Behind me you can see the story we're going to read. There's my door. There's a painting on my wall. There's my desk. That's my closet. That's where I read books. I'll put the book I read you over there. There's my window. There are some shelves and another window. And if I keep turning it, you're back to Mommy. So I'm going to take a few minutes and I'm going to introduce you to the book that I'm reading you. It's called the Illiad. And I'm going to read the inside. It's going to tell you about who wrote it originally, hundreds and I think 1,000 years ago. And then I'll tell you about who made this version with the pictures in it. So the first thing that we're going to do is make sure that you're comfy in your bed, that you've got your jammies on and your teeth are brushed, and that you listen to Daddy. And I'll come and give you a kiss after this. Tell Opal I love her and I miss her, and rub Daddy and Gary's head for me. So, about the Illiad. Here's the inside cover. You can see that there's very pretty pictures on the inside. Lydia. The Iliad is a story about human bravery and the heartbreak of war. When it opens, two different groups of people, one called the Greeks and one called the Trojans, have been fighting for almost 10 years, ever since the Trojan prince Paris carried off Helen, the king of Sparta's beautiful wife. It seems that the war will never end. Then a quarrel splits the Greek armies, and the Trojans launch an attack. When the gods take sides, Troy's fate hangs in the balance. So we're talking about two different groups of people, the Greeks and the Trojans, and then we're talking about their many gods. And among them, one of them is called Helen, and she's beautiful. And that's what your Auntie Helena is named after, and my grandma, your great-grandma, and your grandpa's mommy, whose name is also Helen. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about who made this version of the story, because it's a very old story. So this book is written now, remade by Gillian Cross, and they finally retell Homer's epic story, capturing all the heroism and savagery of war, and shows why the Iliad has been called the first great tragedy and the greatest literary achievement of Greek civilization. Now about the pictures. The profound humanity of Neil Packer's magnificent pictures draws the reader into the feelings and struggles of the Iliad's iconic characters and evokes all the bravery and remoteness of the story's ancient setting. So this story is set in a far, far away place in the Mediterranean. And that's what we're going to learn a little bit about. First, we're going to learn why everyone is fighting, and we're going to learn who the characters are. And that's where Mommy will end the story tonight, once we know who's part of the story and how the story will start. In the beginning of the book, we have the title page, the Iliad, and you can see that there's two figures in the front. Then if I turn the page again, you'll see the title page with the author's name and the new illustrator. Mommy really likes this page. I think it's super cool. If we go one page further, we see the table of contents, and those numbers next to those words represent each chapter and where you can find them in the book. That word at the top in bold says contents. And now we'll begin our story. And you can see the two figures in the front, and they look like they might be getting mad at each other. So this is the story of a bitter quarrel between two proud and powerful men. The quarrel grew into a war that brought death to hundreds of brave heroes and destroyed the great cities of the world, and yet it started with something very small. This is the first page. It's called The Golden Apple. It all began with an apple, a golden apple engraved with dangerous words. For the most beautiful, three goddesses tried to claim it. But which of them really was the most beautiful? Was it Hera, the wife of Zeus, king of the gods, or Athene, the goddess of wisdom, or Aphrodite, the goddess of love. To settle the argument, the three goddesses left their home on high, Olympus, and went to find Paris, Prince of Troy, the most handsome man in the world. They found him on Mount Ida, where they appeared in front of him in all of their loveliness. "Who should have the apple?" they said. "Choose one of us." Paris was dazed and terrified, but the three goddesses were determined to have an answer. They began to offer him bribes. "Choose me," said Hera. "I will give you power and make you a great ruler." We look at that picture, and we can see the three goddesses over here with the apple that's made of gold. This is the prince with another apple, and this is the mountain Ida that he's living on. This page is just words, so I'm going to read it. "Choose me," said Athene. "I will ensure that you win all of your battles and become a famous warrior." Aphrodite smiled silkily. "Choose me," she murmured, "and you shall have the most beautiful woman in the world for your wife." Aphrodite's bribe was the one that delighted Paris, but it cast a long and deadly shadow. The most beautiful woman in the world was Helen of Sparta, and she was already married to Sparta's king Menelaus. Aphrodite knew that, but she promised Helen to Paris, and he stretched out his hand and gave her the apple. So Aphrodite, even though she was beautiful, told Paris that if he would give her the apple, that she would give him Helen, even though Helen already has a life somewhere else. And that's the way the quarrel began on Olympus and boiled over into the human world. So all of these people we're talking about originally are gods and goddesses, but they're starting a very big fight that's going to affect humans as well. With Aphrodite's help, Paris set out to steal the king of Sparta's wife. He was already handsome, but she made him irresistible, dazzled and entranced. Helen left her husband, and she and Paris ran off to Troy together, with a ship full of Spartan treasure. Menelaus was outraged, so was his brother Agamemnon, high king over all the Greeks. The two brothers called the other kings of Greece to help them fetch Helen back. The quarrel that started with an apple spread wider and wider. In every part of Greece, kings gathered their armies. Fleets of long ships sail for Troy, carrying heroes with names that will live forever, like quick-witted Odysseus of Ithaca, wise old Nestor, king of the Pylos, valiant Diomedes of Argos, and noble Ajax who ruled Salamis. Mightiest of all was Achilles, the great runner, son of the sea nymph Thetis. His bronze armor gleamed as he led his fierce Myrmidon soldiers into their ships. The Greeks attacked as soon as they landed on the Trojan coast. But Troy was not an easy city to conquer. It was protected by rivers on two sides and surrounded by strong, high walls. And King Priam, Paris's father, refused to hand Helen back. Instead, he called on his allies to help him defend the city. He had 50 sons, every one of them ready to fight for Helen and her treasure. They were all brave men, but the bravest of all and the noblest warrior was Prince Hector, tamer of the horses. He had 50 sons, every one of them ready to fight for Helen and her treasure. They were all brave men, but the bravest of all and the noblest warrior was Prince Hector, tamer of horses. The Greeks could not fight their way into Troy, but they refused to leave without Helen. Pulling their long ships up onto the beach, they built huts on the shore and settled down to lay siege to the city. No one guessed how long it would take. 9 years later, they were still there, living in the same cramped huts for 9 years. They were still fighting battles on the plain in front of Troy, still trying to breach the city walls. They would not give up and abandon their war, but all of them longed for their homes that they had left behind in Greece. No wonder they began to quarrel amongst themselves. Quarrel means fighting. So now we're going to look at pictures of all of these characters we just talked about. On the red side, you'll see the Trojan side, and on the brown side, you'll see the Greek side. So those are the Trojans. And then these are the Greeks. on the brown side. Let me read you their names. So here we have Aphrodite. She's incredibly beautiful. And we have Apollo. Both of them are at the top. They are gods. Then we have Priam. Priam. Then we have Hector. We have Paris. He's the one who had the apple. And then we have Hecuba. We have Helen. We have Aeneas. Dolon. And Briseis. On the Greek side, you can see the gods have these big radiant things coming out of their heads, these big sun marks, because they're gods. So then we have Athene and Hera. These are the men. Agamemnon, Achilles, Odysseus, Ajax, Patroclus, Menelaus, Diomedes, and Nestor. This is where we'll start when I read to you next. This is called the quarrel, and you can see those big two faces on the side look like they're very angry at each other and that they might start fighting soon. And this is the next part Mommy will read to you when I make your video in the next day or so. So Lydia, I hope you have sweet dreams. Mommy loves you. Cuddle your owlie for me and kiss those animals and their daddy. And love you and call me when you need me. Bye.